The savannah sun, a warm, deceptive orange, began its slow surrender over the Sandfly neighborhood, painting the neat, identical rows of suburban homes in hues of fading warmth. Inside her nondescript rental car, Kesha Delaney sat low, a silent sentinel in the encroaching twilight. One hand rested lightly on the steering wheel, a familiar anchor, while the other cradled a phone that was neither recording nor dialing, a mere prop in the meticulous theater of her covert operation. To any casual passerby, she was an innocuous figure, perhaps a woman patiently awaiting a friend, or idly scrolling through messages. But Kesha wasn't here for idle chatter. Her gaze was a fixed, unwavering point on the cream-colored house at the corner. Its porch lights remained stubbornly off, blinds drawn halfway, a silent, almost defiant facade. 2 cars idled in the driveway, yet no one had entered or exited in over an hour, a stillness that prickled at her finely honed instincts. Her informant's whispers had been precise. The suspect, a key player in a domestic arms network, was holed up within those walls, likely armed, definitely steeped in paranoia. 6 long months had Kesha and her team meticulously unraveled the threads of this clandestine web. Her current directive was brutally simple, a testament to the fragile line she walked. Confirm presence, do not engage, call it in if so much as a shadow stirred. There was no backup visible, no comforting weight of a vest, no glint of a badge to assert authority. Just the rented sedan, a silent accomplice, and nerves honed to a razor's edge, capable of slicing through any unexpected twist. She took a slow, deliberate sip from a cold coffee, its cardboard taste a familiar, grounding ritual. Her eyes, restless and sharp, darted between the expansive canvas of the windshield and the narrow reflection of the side mirror. Still, nothing. The entire street seemed caught in a suspended animation. Children's laughter had faded, lawn sprinklers had clicked into silence. It was too quiet, a hush she usually welcomed, for silence, in her world, meant control, meant no surprises. Then, a sudden, jarring bark ripped through the quiet. Her head snapped left. A middle-aged woman stood in her yard, one hand shielding her eyes from the setting sun, the other gripping a leash tautly held by a small dog. The animal, a furious, yapping bundle, seemed to have spotted a ghost, directing its agitated bark squarely at Kesha's car. Kesha remained motionless, an unblinking statue. But the woman, a civilian intrusion into her tightly controlled sphere, took a few tentative steps forward, a furrow of blatant curiosity etching her brow. She was clearly trying to decipher the enigma of the woman who had remained so stubbornly still for over 30 minutes. Kesha subtly lowered her eyes. She knew that look. The longer you lingered in a place where people instinctively felt you didn't belong, the more dangerous the situation became. This was a truth etched into her very being, needing no reinforcement. The woman, whoever she was, eventually turned, her phone pressed tight against her ear, and walked back inside. Kesha's stomach clenched, a cold knot of dread. She leaned forward, adjusted the mirror, her heart beat a steady, unwavering drum, but her breath hitched, a sudden catch in her throat. She knew, with chilling certainty, that call hadn't been about a barking dog, it had been about her. But Kesha couldn't leave. Not yet. The target, the elusive phantom, was still inside. Inside her car, Kesha adjusted her posture, pushing her back tighter into the seat. Her muscles were tense, not from fear, a luxury she rarely afforded herself, but from sheer, laser-like focus. The moment that woman had disappeared into her house, a mental countdown had begun. 1 minute, maybe 2. That was the usual window. The predictable lag it took for someone to dial 911 when they felt a foreign presence in their carefully curated piece. She checked the target's house again. Still nothing. Not a single curtain moved. Her earpiece buzzed softly, a low voice crackling through. Bravo 1, what's your status? Kesha pressed her thumb to the MIC clipped to her collar, her eyes never leaving the suspect's house. Still eyes on. No movement. Possible compromise. Neighbor made a call. The voice returned, clipped and immediate. Roger. Sit tight. You're not cleared to move. She released the button, letting her hands fall to her lap. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on her. She was sitting in a car, following direct orders from the federal government, tracking a suspected weapons trafficker, and someone had just called the cops on her. A few minutes stretched, each second a taut wire. Then she saw it before she heard it, the unmistakable flicker of flashing blue and red lights, casting sharp, disjointed colors across driveways and parked cars. The sound followed, tires crunching over gravel, amplified in the quiet evening. One marked patrol car, then another, pulling up with an almost theatrical presence. 2 officers stepped out. One, male, white, looked to be in his late 30s, already reaching instinctively toward his belt, a gesture of immediate authority. The other, older, moved with more careful deliberation, radio in hand, scanning the street with practiced caution, as if looking for a visible threat. Kesha sat still, a statue of contained tension. She could feel it in her chest, not panic, but a cold, keen anticipation. This wasn't something she wanted, or needed. But she had to handle it. Exactly right. Her cover, thin as it was real. The first officer approached her window, his hand still hovering near his holster. You live around here." Kesha calmly turned her head, her voice measured, just enough volume to be heard, not enough to provoke. "Government surveillance. I can't answer any questions." He blinked, clearly caught off guard by the unexpected, almost audacious, response. "You got ID?" Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a laminated federal ID. It didn't explicitly say CIA, but it was real. And it was valid. "I'm on assignment. I'm not permitted to disclose details." The older officer had now joined his partner, standing just behind him. Mind stepping out of the vehicle. That was the moment Kesha knew the mission was already fraying. If she stepped out, she'd lose visual on the house, breaking her core directive. If she didn't, things could spiral into a far more dangerous confrontation. She tried one last time, her voice firm, laced with an unspoken warning. "You're interfering with a federal investigation. You need to radio this in right now." The younger officer's hand moved further toward his weapon, not drawn, but close enough to send a clear message. "That's not how this works. Step out of the car. Now." Kesha locked eyes with him, a quiet challenge in her gaze. "You're making a mistake." But the second officer had already moved, stepping toward her door, and Kesha felt the momentum shifting, gaining a dangerous speed. The younger officer's tone shifted, hardening, now laced with an edge of impatience. We're not going to ask again. Step out of the vehicle." Kesha's fingers remained loose in her lap, her heartbeat calm, a testament to years of training. She wasn't new to this. She had been in interrogation rooms with foreign spies, held her breath under harsh interrogation lights, shadowed cartel contacts in cities where she didn't speak the language. But this was different. Because this time, her enemy didn't know they were looking at an ally. "I'm not resisting," she said, her voice even, "but I can't move without compromising an active OP. You need to call this in. Ask for Deputy Director Leo Evans. Passcode Echo 93 Delta." The older cop paused, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He looked at the ID again, then at her, a silent calculation. Then, he stepped aside to radio dispatch. But the younger one didn't like the stall. "Get out of the car, now," he shouted. Kesha didn't move immediately. "I'm telling you," he opened her door, his voice sharp with command. "Out of the car," he yelled. She put one foot out, slowly, deliberately, then the other, her hands visible, palms open, a gesture of compliance. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "They are." "Turn around." She hesitated, a fleeting fraction of a second. That was all it took. In one swift, practiced motion, he reached for her arm, twisting it behind her back, pushing her chest toward the cold metal of the car hood. "Hey!" the older cop shouted, stepping forward, a note of alarm in his voice. "Stand down. I haven't cleared this yet." But it was too late. Her cheek pressed cold against the metal. Her sunglasses had fallen, and for the first time, her full face was exposed to the fading light. Sweat beaded at her brow, her jaw clenched tight. Kesha didn't scream, didn't fight. She endured. The younger officer barked orders. "You got weapons on you." "I'm a federal agent. Let go of me." "Yeah, funny how that works." The older cop, Mason, ran back to the squad car, holding the mic tight to his mouth. He wasn't yelling, and that was the real sign of urgency. He knew now. Something wasn't right. He was trying to keep it quiet. Kesha looked up, catching a glimpse of the neighbor, the woman from earlier, peeking through her blinds, hand over her mouth. Another face popped up next to her, maybe her son. Both of them watching, like it was some TV episode, not someone's life. She was cuffed now, sitting on the curb, hands behind her back, shoes scraping against the sidewalk. The younger cop, Officer Green, paced, trying to stay in control of a situation he clearly didn't understand. The older one was on the radio, his voice low, but his words picking up speed. Kesha tilted her head up just slightly, a subtle movement. The suspect's house. Still no movement. Or wait. The curtain shifted. Just for a second. She knew. That meant he had eyes on her. Maybe even a camera watching from inside. Now, the whole op was compromised, and he knew someone was watching him. The SUV would be coming soon. But time had already run out. But before the older cop could finish his frantic radio call, a sound ripped through the humid savannah air like a blade, the screech of tires sliding across pavement. An unmarked SUV, dark grey and wide, a predator on wheels, screeched into view. It didn't slow until the last possible second, sliding to a stop with a harsh, almost violent grace. Before the engine even had a chance to fully quiet, the doors popped open, and out stepped Director Leo Evans. Tall, grey at the temples, his suit wrinkled from a long flight, his face was a mask of tightly controlled fury, but his voice, when it came, was ice. He flashed a badge so quickly it felt like a slap. "Release her. Now." The younger officer, Green, instinctively stepped back, caught in the sudden shift of power. Who? Evans didn't even look at him. His gaze was fixed solely on Kesha, still sitting cuffed on the curb, dust clinging to her sweat-damp skin. "You good?" he asked, his voice low, sharp with concern. She didn't answer right away, her eyes locked on the house, on the subtle shift of that curtain. "The target saw me," she finally muttered, her voice hoarse. Evans followed her gaze, a single, grim nod. "Yeah, I figured. Whole arp's blown." He turned back to the officers, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet carrying immense weight. "Did she show you ID?" The younger cop swallowed hard, the bravado gone from his face. "Yeah, but she wouldn't give details. She was acting secretive." Evans snapped, the control in his voice wavering with barely contained rage. "She's a CIA officer. Her assignment was covert. You just blew a surveillance operation tied to an illegal arms trade stretching across 4 states." The street went utterly still. Even the older cop, Mason, looked like he'd been punched, his face pale with dawning realization. Evans walked over to Kesha, kneeling down and pulling the cuffs from her wrists himself. The metal clinked as they fell, a small, yet profound sound of liberation. "You all right?" he asked again, his tone softer now. Kesha stood slowly, her shoulders rolling stiffly. The cold metal had left deep, angry red marks. Her expression, however, remained unchanged, a stoic mask. "I'm not hurt. Just done here." Mason cleared his throat, attempting to regain some semblance of authority. "Sir, we were responding to a civilian call, and," Evans cut him off, his voice quiet, deadly. "And you ignored a federal credential. You didn't call it in until after she was cuffed. That's obstruction of a federal investigation. You're lucky we don't press charges." Evans turned towards the neighbor's house. The blinds dropped fast, a visible sign of retreat. He gave it one last, hard look, then glanced down the street. People were watching. Phones were probably out now, glinting in the fading light. It was only a matter of time before the wrong clip made it to the internet. Kesha bent down, retrieved her sunglasses from the ground, bending them back into shape. She didn't bother putting them on. She simply looked at the cops, her gaze unwavering. No anger. No fear. Just that silent pressure, that deep, unsettling calm that made ordinary people feel very small. "Next time someone shows you a federal ID," she said quietly, her voice like sandpaper, "you listen before you reach for your cuffs." But just as Kesha started walking toward the waiting SUV, The radio on Mason's shoulder crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice, clipped and urgent, delivered words that made them all freeze. Dispatch to Unit 47, be advised, suspect just fled the premises on foot. Black male, late 30s, possibly armed. Last seen running northbound toward Truman Park. Everyone froze for half a second, the realization hitting like a physical blow. Then, chaos. Evan spun toward Kesha, his face taut. Did you see him leave? Kesha shook her head, her gaze sharp, distant. No, but he saw me get cuffed. That was the window. The younger cop, Green, looked stunned, a slow understanding dawning in his eyes. Wait, that house. Evans shot him a look that could melt steel. Yes. The one you parked in front of like you were delivering pizza. Kesha was already moving, a blur of controlled motion. She flung open the SUV door, yanked out a small tactical bag, and strapped on her radio earpiece with practiced efficiency. I'm going after him. I know his face. You two stay out of my way. She started running, not a full sprint yet, but fast enough to close ground without losing control, her movements economical and precise. She cut across the neighbor's perfectly manicured lawn, easily jumped a low hedge, and made directly for the alley behind the houses. The sun was lower now, bleeding into the horizon, and shadows stretched long and distorted, making it harder to see clearly. Her shoes kicked up bits of gravel as she moved, a rhythmic crunch against the quiet. A flash of movement ahead. She paused, listening, every sense alert. Then, another sound, a clatter, perhaps a trash can lid falling. It could have been deliberate, a panicked misstep. Either way, it was him. She kept her steps unnaturally quiet, a predator stalking its prey, as she crept toward the sound. Her hand hovered near her belt, a familiar comfort, but she didn't draw her weapon. Not yet. She wasn't here to kill anybody, just to catch him. Then, a figure dashed from behind a storage shed, a dark silhouette against the fading light. Kesha bolted after him. Stop, she shouted, her voice cutting through the evening air. He looked back, eyes wide with terror, ducking under a low-hanging tree branch. He was fast. Too fast. If he hit the street, she'd lose him, dissolve into the labyrinth of the city. She needed to slow him down. Freeze. Federal agent. No response. He just kept running, fueled by pure adrenaline. She reached into her belt and threw a small flash beacon toward the curb, timing it for just as he turned the corner. It burst with a loud crack and a blinding flash of white light, enough to disorient, but not injure. He staggered, losing his rhythm, a precious second of vulnerability. That was all she needed. She lunged, tackling him against the fence, a jarring impact as they both hit the ground. Her knee pressed firmly into his back, pinning him. He struggled for a second, a desperate surge of resistance, but she already had his wrist pinned, a vice-like grip. Try it again, she growled, her voice low and dangerous, and you're going to wake up in a hospital bed. He cursed under his breath, spitting into the grass. Footsteps pounded in behind her, heavy and ragged. It was Mason, the older cop, trying to redeem himself, breathing hard. You got him, he called out. Kesha didn't look up. He's not going anywhere. The suspect didn't say much, but his face told the whole story. He wasn't just scared, he was confused, angry. You're the woman who was sitting in the car, he said, the accusation clear in his voice. That's right, Kesha said, gripping his wrist tighter. While you were counting your money and hiding blueprints in your basement, I was 10 feet away watching everything. And I'd still be watching if these officers hadn't decided I looked suspicious. But as she stood over him, sirens now echoing down the block, it wasn't the suspect she kept thinking about. It was how easily it all nearly slipped through her fingers. Reflection and broader implications. Kesha sat in the back of the SUV now, elbows on her knees, her eyes locked on the passing sidewalks. Director Evans drove, a silent, grim presence beside her. The suspect was in a cruiser 2 blocks behind them, head ducked, hands cuffed, this time, the right person. But victory didn't feel like much. Evans glanced at her through the rearview mirror. You should have pulled rank sooner. She didn't answer right away, just watched a kid ride his bike along the sidewalk, dodging a row of garbage bins like it was a game. If I pulled rank too soon, she finally said, her voice quiet, I'd have blown the op. He grunted, a sound of reluctant agreement. And if you hadn't held your ground, they might have done worse than put you on the curb. Kesha exhaled slowly, her voice quieter now, a raw edge to it. I've been overseas, Leo. I've been followed, cornered. I've had people put guns to my head in languages I barely understood. But nothing feels like being handcuffed in your own country because someone thinks you don't belong. Silence filled the SUV, the engine's low hum feeling heavy, burdened by unspoken truths. Evans tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought we were past this. Thought the badge meant something. Kesha looked out the window. It does. But not to everybody. They pulled up to the safe house, an old duplex turned temporary op center. She climbed out, stretching her sore wrists. The marks were already starting to bruise, angry red against her skin. 2 agents in suits approached the SUV, both white, both clean-cut and fresh out of Quantico. They nodded politely, offered to debrief. One even held the door open like a valet. She walked past them without speaking. Inside, she poured herself a cup of stale coffee, the kind that had been sitting on a burner way too long, bitter, burnt, but she drank it anyway. It grounded her. Evans followed her in. You want me to file a formal complaint? Kesha shook her head. No point. It would get buried under standard procedure and miscommunication. They'll say it was a tense situation, that they were responding to a concerned citizen, that they acted in good faith. He leaned against the counter. And you good with that? She looked up at him, the lines under her eyes deeper now. I'm used to it. Doesn't mean I'm good with it. He nodded slowly. Then, Kesha asked something she hadn't asked in years. You ever think about leaving this job? Evans gave a tired smile. Every week. But I stay because if I leave, who takes my place? Some guy who doesn't understand what it's like walking into a room and having to prove every single time that you belong there. She stared at him for a second. Yeah, she said softly. That's why I stay too. But just as she turned to leave the kitchen, one of the new agents stepped into the room with a file and a question that would change everything they thought they knew about the mission. The agent held up the folder, his eyes wide. We found something, he said, handing it over. From the laptop we pulled out of the house. Evans opened the folder, flipping past receipts and coded emails until he hit a single sheet. His face changed. Kesha leaned over. It wasn't just a local operation. The man they caught was part of a much larger ring, shipping illegal weapons not just across states, but to militia cells preparing for coordinated attacks. Multiple targets. Multiple cities. Schools. Community centers. Churches. One address stood out, a small church in Fayetteville. She'd visited it once. Her godson had been baptized there. This was real, she muttered. Worse than we thought. Evans looked up, his jaw tight. Kesha, if you hadn't stuck around, if you'd left when that woman called, they would have moved everything by morning. She finished for him, her voice grim. And nobody would have stopped them. The room was quiet again. But not the kind of silence that weighs you down. It was the kind that makes you realize how close you came to the edge, and how different things could have been. She sat down and rubbed her wrist. The bruise was spreading now. Her skin didn't just hurt, it remembered. I was 5 minutes away from being another viral video, she said softly. Another headline they'd forget about in a week. Evans sat across from her instead. You saved lives. You saved a lot of lives. She nodded, but the pride didn't come easy. Across town, 2 officers sat in a squad room, quietly reviewing their body cam footage. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. What they saw, the moment Kesha was cuffed, the way she never resisted, the way they assumed, it all looked different now. Not just through the lens of hindsight, but through shame. The younger one, Officer Green, finally broke the silence. I didn't see it, he said. All I saw was someone parked in the wrong place. Didn't even ask why she was there. The older cop, Mason, gave a quiet grunt. That's the problem, he said. We didn't ask. We just moved. Across the street, the neighbor who made the call stood on her porch. She hadn't left her house since the incident. She held a cup of tea, untouched, and watched her son ride his bike down the driveway. He looked over at her. "Mom, is that the lady from yesterday?" She didn't answer, just watched the horizon. Finally, she whispered, mostly to herself, "She was protecting us. And I called the cops on her." Back at the safe house, Kesha stood and stretched. "I should get some rest," she said. "I've got a flight to DC tomorrow." Evans raised an eyebrow. "You sure? You just caught the biggest break in 6 months." She gave a half smile. "I've done my part. Time to pass the baton." He nodded. "You ever want to stop doing this? I wouldn't blame you." She looked back at him. "But if I did, who takes my place?" She walked toward the door, her steps slow but certain. Her job hadn't been to make people comfortable. It was to protect them. Even the ones who feared her. Especially them. She opened the door and stepped out into the late evening air. No more flashing lights. No more questions. Just her, a city she didn't belong to, and a mission nobody saw coming. But that was okay. She never needed credit. She just needed the truth to matter. Because sometimes the person you're afraid of is the one keeping you alive. And sometimes the hero isn't the one with the gun. It's the one who stayed calm, stood firm, and never stopped doing the right thing, even when no one believed her.